And when he dies, his children have to take over. When their children have to take over. It's called a latifundia. I wish we had some from Venezuela here or some from Bolivia here in this gathering. And so we were warned in just these few words, ad'afa muda'afa, that the rate of interest multiplies. So the rope can become tighter and tighter until eventually you are enslaved. This is precisely what has happened in the world. But when the revelation came down, the wisdom of the Prophet ﷺ, dazzling to behold. And only one man I know of was able to recognize that wisdom. He was a British sheikh who wrote a book on the subject, Merchant of Venice. Shakespeare. The Prophet ﷺ enforced the prohibition of money lending on interest from that day forward. But he did it only for new transactions and did not do it, we'll use a big word now, did not enforce it retroactively. So if the revelation came down Monday morning and you lent money on interest on Tuesday and the fellow refused to repay the money with interest and he goes to the court will refuse to uphold the legality of the transaction. No, it's an invalid transaction, haram. But if he lent the money last week and you refuse to pay, he can go to court. And the court would uphold the validity of the transaction because the prohibition of riba is not enforced retroactively. Why? Why? It's such a pity that they should say that this stage of the process is now mansukh. It is abrogated, it is cancelled, it is superseded by another stage. The reason why he acted this way is because you want to win the battle in the economy. And if you want to win the battle in the economy, you have to have strategy. You have to be able to corner the moneylender. You have to be able to marginalize the moneylender. And you have to succeed in demonizing the moneylender before you pick up your sword. So when you pick up your sword, it's just for the finishing job. And this is the stage that we now have in Medina. And it continues from approximately the year 3 of the Hijrah until the farewell pilgrimage. So people are asking, Allah has made it haram. No new riba. So who are those who are still collecting? So now you can identify them. So and so and so and so and so and so are still collecting riba. They don't like their names to be published in the newspapers, you know. When the bank has to repossess, no, they don't want their names published. It looks bad. So you now admit of the possibility of targeting them because they're the only ones still collecting riba, but no one else is allowed to. These are the professional money lenders. And then you now have a process in the economy in which people are telling to the moneylender, speaking to him, listen, how can you take and give nothing in return? Don't you have any sympathy for the people? Don't you have any human kindness? Don't you have any sense of justice? This is what Shakespeare captured with absolute brilliance in Merchant of Venice. So please go back and read Merchant of Venice after having listened to this lecture. And as this process of demonization continues, and the appeal to the human compassion of the heart of the moneylender continues, and social pressure is being brought to bear upon them, and even the children are feeling embarrassed. Daddy, you know what they're saying at school? Some of the moneylenders stop. They have the right to demand, but they say we voluntarily give it up. So that over a period of time, more and more moneylenders will give up the riba. And only at the last moment, when Nabi Muhammad ﷺ was addressing the people from Arafat, only then, in his wisdom, only then did he enforce the prohibition of riba retroactively. See the wisdom? Now, if you still refuse to give up the riba, we're going to take up the sword against you. And we are beginning with the riba which is due to my uncle, Abbas. It's cancelled. If Allah and His Messenger are at war, then we are also at war. And so the very last revelation that came down in the Quran was a revelation which made it obligatory on the Ummah of Muhammad ﷺ to use force, military force, to ensure that riba does not again return to the economy. Because this poison, if it is injected into the economy, would paralyze you and open the gates to slavery. This has been an examination or a review of the stage-by-stage process of dealing with the subject of riba in the Quran. Stage 1, public education. Stage 2, prohibition, but no retroactive enforcement. And in stage 2, the process of public relations process must be pursued vigorously to marginalize the moneylender, to corner him, to defeat him in the battle for public opinion. And then stage 3, when he is cornered, the enforcement of the prohibition of riba retroactively. Now we come to ma nansakh min ayatin aw nunsiha na'ti bi khayrin minha aw mithliha. Which surah? Masabo? You had too much for breakfast this morning. Surah Al-Baqarah. Surah Al-Baqarah. I think there were 106. The overwhelming majority of our learned scholars apply abrogation internally in the Quran, despite the fact that he who was sent, who was appointed by Allah to teach the Quran, the only one so appointed, never told us of any verse of the Quran being abrogated or cancelled or forgotten. Yet the overwhelming majority of our scholars hold the view that that abrogation is to be found internally in the Quran. And as a consequence, they say that once you drink, we got to beat you. Remember yesterday? Was it yesterday?
Yes.
Once you drink, we got to beat you. And therefore the stage-by-stage process of dealing with the disease of alcoholism is no longer applicable. We got non-Muslims in the village, huh? My next door neighbor, the police officer, they're non-Muslims. All that we'll say to them is, keep the alcohol in the home. We're not going to prohibit them from having alcohol in their home. Just don't bring it out in the public. All right? Where they'll buy the alcohol is not my business. It's not going to be sold, of course, in a Muslim village. You crazy? But if he goes to Cape Town and he buys his alcohol and he comes back to the village, I'm not going to stop him. He's not a Muslim. And these people who are addicted to vodka, remember the Russians? We're not going to sell you the vodka, but if you need the vodka, you got to find it. But remember, if someone is addicted to drugs and you deny him access to drugs, then there's a stage which he can reach where he'll become a killer. He'll kill you. So be careful. Alright? Well, you cannot buy your vodka in the village. But if you need the vodka, you could bring it with you. You could get it from outside. We're not going to prohibit you. Not in the Muslim village. So they say that this stage-by-stage process is abrogated for alcohol. And so don't take the Shahada, brother, until you're cured, because once you take the Shahada and you're in this village, we're going to beat you. So the poor fellas did not take the Shahada. There were 12 of them. 12. And about a month later, you know what happened to the bus? And they all died. There you are. That's your system. But we said, take the Shahada, brother. Take it right away. And then we had stage 1, public education. We took him to the hospital. We took him to the cemetery. And where did we take him again? Police stations. And a number of them gave it up through the appeal to the rational faculty. And then we embraced them with the love of the Brotherhood of Islam and the masjid and salat and so on. And then we hit them, no salat, until you can understand what you're saying. A mother put her sons out of the house. It hit them. And so an internal power emerged now to complement the external power to break the chain. And then came the third stage. Now since we appeal to the external and we fail, and we appeal to the internal and we fail, now we're going to have to shame you. Huh? So if you drink, we're going to beat you. But not an act of brutality. A slipper, or we take off the shirt and roll it. And after we give him 1 or 2 beatings, that's it, no more. This is our way, because we did not apply abrogation internally in the Quran. Similarly with riba. In Pakistan, it was in the 1980s perhaps, the government, the parliament, passed legislation that the prohibition of riba is going to be enforced from the 31st of July, so on, so on, so on, so on. So on that day, all riba stops. Do you believe that? Did they never hear what a man named Muhammad alayhi salatu wasalam? Did they never study of how he proceeded with the subject of prohibition of riba in Medina? I hope that this lecture were to reach to them, inshallah, somehow or the other.